I would like to thank everyone for being here this morning. Anderson County partners with the Knox County Regional Forensic Center as they serve as the chief medical examiner for Knox and Anderson counties. Their facility operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all year long. The center has several missions, including but not limited to assisting law enforcement agencies in their investigations, extending research support for local and national medical, legal, academic, and law enforcement investigations, and providing accurate, timely, compassionate, and professional death investigative services. Another mission is to identify and develop an understanding of sudden, unexpected, and unnatural deaths and educate the public about those deaths. And that is why we are here this morning. Chief Medical Examiner Dr. Malusnik and Chief Administrative Officer Chris Thomas regularly stay in touch with Anderson County regarding the trends they note through their work at the Forensic Center. To that point, they alerted Anderson County to a trend in the wrong direction for infant mortality in our county. To those family and friends who lost an infant, our hearts go out to you, and please know that we grieve with you. Today, we are here to learn more about the infant mortality trend and then marshal forces to help alert the community, help educate, and prevent infant deaths. Our lineup today begins with Chief Medical Examiner for Knox County Regional Forensic Center, Dr. Darinka Malusnik. Dr. Malusnik?
Thank you.
Thank you for being here, and thank you for the introduction, Mayor Frank. The reason we are here today is to alert the community because of the negative trend that has come to our attention. We gather some data, and since 2019, yearly kind of trend kind of fluctuated, and it was not that concerning. The infant mortality kind of all remained the same, and just to keep in mind that all of these deaths are preventable, and that's why we are here, and that's part of our role, actually, not just to decide or determine what the cause and manner of death is, but also alert the community to certain trends, and certainly infant death is one of the trends that we are mostly concerned about. Our forensic center has completed 185 autopsies. We do perform medical legal death investigation for Knox and Anderson County, but we also cover 23 additional counties with the autopsy service, and infant death is always one of those situations when the autopsy is warranted. That includes the scene investigation and then, of course, the processing and autopsy with the ancillary studies. So Anderson County represents population-wise less than kind of 10% of the overall population that we cover with the autopsy service. However, the trend has been such that actually surpassed the 10% of all the infant deaths. So 185 autopsies, 100 of those autopsies were unsafe sleeping environment, which are, again, all preventable, and Anderson County had 14 deaths. 10 of those were unsafe sleep, and numbers range from 1 in 2019 to 3 in 2021, 2 in 22, and then this year we noticed we had the infant death of 4 just for the first 6 months, and for us that was very alarming, and that's why we are here. And then I can answer any questions and later on how we go about investigating these deaths and what it really means to die from asphyxia due to unsafe sleeping environment. But the main thing, again, to remember is these are very preventable deaths, and there are some good points and recommendations that we can always make to have that prevented. When I talk about the unsafe sleeping environment, we are talking about adult beds, adults sharing that sleeping environment with the children, too much bedding or child between adult and the wall, sofas, and then we also report that to Consumer Safety Commission when there are other products involved, such as boppy pillows, nursing pillows, or some rockers and chairs that are not intended for sleep for the infants. And so these are the numbers, and these are the kind of scene situations that we encounter. And I'm going to stop here and then actually allow others who are involved in these unfortunate situations to speak more to what they do and what they see. But as I said, I thought this number of 4 in the first 6 months definitely warranted the community attention. Thank you.
Next, I'll introduce Bobby Jo Henderson. Bobby Jo is the Deputy Director of Education, and she'll speak to us about prevention and safe sleeping practices. And also as a note, Nathan Sweet, our EMS Director, will follow Bobby Jo, and then we'll have questions and answers. And then also you have an opportunity to interview any of the speakers individually. Bobby Jo.
Thank you. Just wanted to touch on a few things. Our goal is prevention, as Dr. Malusnik said. Babies need to sleep, what they say ABC, alone. So as she spoke of, not on a couch with another adult, not in an adult bed. They need to sleep on their back, and they also need to sleep in a crib. And I understand that these things have changed. And a pack and play would suffice for a crib if they didn't have a crib, but we need to try to keep them out of adult beds. We have recognized, I sat on the Child Fatality Review Committee, and we have recognized that this is a multi-generational problem. So we have young children that are having children, and so it's easier for them to actually just put them in the bed with them or lay on the couch with them, and so there's problems there, as well as grandparents that have kept children or infants. When they keep them, they also this is the way we've always done it. You were fine, and we try to get away from that. So I've got examples up here, but ultimately the child should have nothing but a hard, flat surface to sleep in. Should have no boppy pillows, no blankets, no stuffed animals, no bumper pads. So prevention is the biggest way we can prevent these from happening. As Anderson County EMS, we've set up and dedicated a booth at the fair to try to get the word out to the community as they come through. We also, anytime we have a chance, we go to the Senior Citizen Center for an education day or to a church for CPR, and we really just try to plug in the right way for that. Also, there's another prevention, and it's called DOSE, and it's direct on-scene education. And so anytime we meet with our first responders and have any kind of training, we try to explain to them that they would be able to educate the public when we went into a home. So for instance, if somebody calls for chest pain and we go into a home and we recognize that they don't have sleeping conditions for their infant, or maybe perhaps they're even doing it right in front of us, if the situation warrants that we can do that, or a first responder can stay on the scene as we transport the patient and the reason why we were there, we can educate those people that it's not the safest way, and maybe give them something that they didn't already know. And then lastly, we're looking for partners to help us with pack and plays so that we can, when we go to a home and we see a situation and they don't have the means to get a pack and play or an appropriate place for their child to sleep, then perhaps we can provide them a pack and play and try to deliver it to them as soon as possible. The state provides all kind of literature, all kinds of little notes, boards, anything like that. Refrigerator boards are magnetic for a babysitter, and it just reminds them. There's also tags for diaper bags to remind daycares or somebody that's keeping their child that maybe that's how they raise their child. And so there's sheets for the bedding and stuff like that. So any of that stuff. But again, we'll be ready for questions if you have any.
Well, thank you all very much for taking the time to come out to hear our feedback, that we really are trying to take the opportunity to communicate, to educate, to promote to our residents, the people in the area, and the people and the viewers watching your television. So you've heard a lot of important details and feedback. Honestly, it comes back to education. For people to learn that times have changed, The things and that we used to do are not exactly the best thing for us to do today. We are trying to get that word out. We're trying to communicate. So as you've heard, most of these deaths are preventable. And honestly, for our providers, for our medics that go on these calls, to go to such a scene and be there and be a part of the worst day of somebody's life with the absolute blessing that they received in that baby to be gone, and for our providers to be there to console the family, but knowing that it was something preventable, it does take a toll. It does take a toll on our providers. It does take an incredible toll on that family, and we are trying to promote that this is an opportunity for us to prevent those fatalities. It's an opportunity for us to keep families whole. It's an opportunity for us, for a child to grow and dream and live. So we hope that this message gets out to the community. There is a way, there is a safe practice that you can provide, and it may not be what you used to do, it may not be how you were raised, but this is the best practice you can do. We are seeing an increase in a lot of grandparents raising their grandchildren. And that actually has created a spike as well, because those grandparents remember how things used to be. They have raised kids successfully. They've raised kids, and they revert back to what they did when they were new parents. And we're trying to promote that that's not the best practice anymore. And that's not the best thing that they can do in these situations, and get that communication out to the public. So we do thank you all again for coming out, taking the time to hear us. And as we have already said, we will be here to answer any more questions. Thank you.
You all want to come up, and are there any questions for any of the speakers today?
Could you explain a little bit more? I don't know if I missed it or a bit about that 4 in the first. I kind of missed that part a little bit. Could you explain?
Dr. Malusnik?
Thank you so much.
So, thank you for asking actually that question, and that's why we're here. We have a program, software program, and our administrator, Chris Thomas, who is here, tracks numbers pretty much daily and weekly and see the trends that are happening in the community. Essentially, that's really kind of our role, to alert to any spikes in unusual cases. And then we were noticing the trend that this year, so far, what we sign out, meaning concluded definitively what the cause and manner of that for these infants were asphyxia, lack of oxygen due to unsafe sleeping environment of different kind of scenarios. And then those deaths, as far as the manner of that, are accidental. And those always spike in our software program that we use, MDI log, which tracks these cases, and concern us greatly. And that's why Mr. Thomas contacted Mayor Frank and said that something is happening in Anderson County. There's a trend there, and then we have to kind of address it and see what the reason is. And the reason behind it pretty much is kind of like a behavior that can be corrected, meaning the environment that these babies are put in to sleep was not really the safest, and then led to their unfortunate premature accidental death.
So I think, were you getting at too that we've seen 4 in just 6 months
6
alone?
months.
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yes.
And the highest number for entire year was 3 in 2021. Other than that, in Anderson County was always low, between 1 and 2. Again, it should not have happened, but I guess it can be tolerated in a big scheme. But 4 in first 6 months was definitely alarming.
Has this been more of a is this a national issue as well, along with the camp?
It is actually a national issue, and we've been seeing trends kind of growing in the opposite direction, even in kind of counties, other counties, but not so much as Anderson County, and that's why we're concerned. And I have to say that part of it basically is either lack of messaging, or kind of change messaging to the social media that bonding is great for the babies. Well, it is, but it has to be done properly under proper circumstances with not too much bedding. Also, smoking and marijuana smoking and drinking or drugs in a parent who is bed sharing is not the safest condition. And that's another thing, another discussion for another time, but that's what we are seeing too. And maybe that's all contributing to this increased trend in infant mortality.
Besides safe sleeping, is there other measures, there are any other spikes and any other sort of causes of death for infant mortality that you guys are seeing besides safe sleeping that the public needs to be aware of?
So right now, not so much. There are always going to be certain deaths that are happening due to natural causes, and obviously homicides are a big concern, and luckily we didn't see spike in homicides, although nationally there is a trend in kind of child abuse increase, especially during COVID years and stuff like that relates to pandemic. We haven't really seen the spike in, for example, homicide. For us, that would be very concerning, and we would definitely have another kind of alert message sent to the community. But it seems like unsafe sleeping, for whatever reason, is number one concern and spike that we are noticing.
Sorry, one more question. With everyone having these baby monitors nowadays and everything, and they think that honestly is something that could prevent this in a sense, but really it couldn't, because you really never know and everything. I guess kind of my question with that is, again, parents really don't even need to rely on like a baby monitor or anything like that to know. You just need to follow the safe sleeping practices and everything like that.
That's the main thing, really. And then these are situations where the baby monitors were certainly not used, because we have a situation where sometimes adults and other siblings, and then all the bedding and a boppy pill on top of that. And then sometimes we also see co-sleeping with the parents, siblings, and animals. So these are obviously all situations that have to be avoided, and certainly situations where the baby monitor would not help, because it just cannot be utilized in that sort of environment. So.
With those 4 deaths, are you guys seeing more of this too many things in the crib, or are you seeing issues with co-sleeping?
It's mainly issue with co-sleeping. Sometimes we see kind of sofa or adult bed with boppy pillow, or a large comforter, multiple pillows. For whatever reason, lately we've been seeing a lot of babies propped by the pillows. That's not what they need. So essentially, that's the main concern. We did have spike of that a couple of years ago with the kind of like a little kind of rocker sleeper, which actually they're really designed for a daytime activity, not so much for sleeping. And we did report those to the Consumer Safety Agency, and they recalled those products from the market. So actually we participated and contributed to recall of certain products for the market that is considered unsafe or can be misused very easily. The state actually does have a program that gives out these pack and play packages to families. What we find inevitably, almost every single scene that our investigators go to, is that pack and play is there, the crib is there, they're filled with stuff and not used for sleeping. So that's actually something that if we can correct that, that would be great, because they're designed for babies, not to store diapers and other items that adults
Laundry.
need.
It's usually
And laundry, and
It's-
sometimes just basically used as storage, really, not for babies to sleep.
We good? Thank you, and you are welcome. Bobby Joe can demonstrate the safe sleeping, what works, what doesn't, and you are welcome to interview anyone you would like to. So thank you.
Thank
We
you.
really
Thanks
appreciate
for
you
coming.
helping get the word out.